Now I'm very excited to welcome back two of the elite handicappers in sports betting in the horse racing world. You know them as Mr. Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com, Mr. Chris Fallica from Fox Sports. Please follow them on Twitter at Marco in Vegas and at Chris, Fallica. Guys, thanks for coming back to talk about the 149th Run for the Roses, my friends. How the heck you doing?
I'm doing good, but I'm a little jealous of my colleague because he's actually at Louisville and getting to go to the Derby. That's a bucket list. I got to get that crossed off one of these years. Get down there. It's just doing so many shows. It makes it tough.
Yeah, it's an I didn't get to go last year. Obviously 2020 I didn't get to go, so I've missed a couple in the last few years. So I figured it was a great opportunity to get back in what is always a fun weekend to see some friends and hang out with some people and look at what I think is a wide open Kentucky Derby.
Well, Chris, I'm sure you're not all that broken apart about missing Rich Strike last year, kind of crawling around the edge and taking first place out of nowhere.
That I will say this: that result is having an effect on my future betting in the Kentucky Derby, just because of the improbable. Like the horse was, you couldn't have the horse, and you've seen that now in this race where a horse that you really couldn't make a case for won, and I had Epicenter, I had other horses in there, so I'm like, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a step back in terms of this year, in terms of the amount of bankroll I'm actually putting towards the Derby, just in case we continue to get unfathomable, unhavable results. So, but yeah, that result did not treat me well last year. That left me very, very bitter.
Yeah, but Marco, that was a right out of left field. It seemed when he kind of came. He costed me too because I think I had number 2 and 3 correct, which would have paired up very nicely.
If you got, I had the exacta cold with the two horses that were coming down the stretch until Rich Strike come. And if you remember, I had a pretty nice future ticket on Epicenter that I thought halfway down the stretch, all I saw was, I forget if it was 31-1 or 33-1, but I saw balloons about to go off of Epicenter across the finish line first. So there wasn't anybody more disappointed than I was. And hats off to Rich Strike for what he did. But remember, guys, we had to have absolute suicide fractions in that race last year for that to set up for the closer. And even with that, he had to zigzag through the entire field. And there were 4 different points in that move that he made that he had to make a split-second decision. And every one of them was right and worked perfect for him, that he never had to check the horse once to get up by a head. Yeah, fun times. Thanks for bringing that back
up. Well, I know that Chris might be thinking about his late move on Country House a couple races ago, and that was a nice one for him. That paid him a nice little exacta box from what you told me during that Derby. And it's just kind of interesting. You got a massive field of horses like we always see, and it's the most handicapped race, at least. I know the Breeders' Cup's the big thing with the horse racers, but this is like for the nation and for the world even. This is probably the most handicapped race. So
yeah, you get the most number of casual bettors. It's the Kentucky Derby. It's the Run for the Roses. I mean, people who aren't going to bet on another horse race throughout the year are going to bet on the Derby. And getting back to what we were talking about with Rich Strike last year, I wonder if that's going to have an effect on the wagering pool, where people are going to bet these hopeless looking long shots on paper just because it did happen last year, and people are going to hope that lightning strikes twice and they get the price horse, and that might bring some of the shorter shots, maybe some of the mid prices in the race. You might get a little better price on the favorite Forte or Angel's Empire or someone in that 8, 10, 12-1 range that maybe you anticipated getting.
Yeah, maybe. I hope it makes my numbers better, I guess is the best way to say it, right? Maybe that will help a little bit. Mattress Mac's going to come in and probably have some sort of influence, and I'm hoping to not be on the horse he's on, I guess. But that's going to happen. And if we can get some inside information on what he's going to do, I'd love to know it. But
wasn't he just going to bet the favorite? Is that what I thought I heard?
That's what he usually does. He's going to bet Forte in this race and run with it. He's a great character guy. I mean, I've got to talk to him on interviews several times. He obviously he loves horse racing. He's the owner of Run Happy. You can't watch a horse race without seeing a commercial for Run Happy. He ties these to all of his promotions, and the guy is legit. You talk about the generosity that the guy has. All these bets are just hedges for what he's doing promotionally at his store, but to do it and do it the way he does it, it's amazing. And he's actually a legend in Houston. I do the radio show here in Vegas with TC Martin, and he goes down to Houston a lot because he's friends with Dusty Baker. And every time he's down there, he gets to meet Mattress Mac, and people just come up constantly the whole time at baseball games, whatever, asking him take a picture with them, family members and kids. And he's a celebrity. He's just a cool, it's like you're having your grandfather, he's that kind of guy, warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, he really seems like a cool guy. I've been following him for years. Never got to meet him, obviously. You're a lot closer to him than I am. But it's definitely something that we follow as sports bettors because he certainly affects things in these massive games. But before we get into the Kentucky Derby a little bit, now I got the Bear on, I got Marco on. I got to talk a little football, guys. So, Chris, I don't remember a year where the big four teams, Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia are all changing out their quarterbacks in the same year. It's like almost like chaos up there up top. I mean, do you have any early thoughts on what it should look like kind of coming in here, and maybe even an early play that you might have made in college football?
It's interesting because I was actually kicking around a thought in my head, like I would expect Michigan to be favored to win the Big Ten. Just because of the number of returnees that they have. They've beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row. They get Ohio State in Ann Arbor this year. So, I'll be surprised if Michigan weren't the favorite to win the Big Ten, and we'll see if that ultimately pans out this year. But I have made one bet. Obviously, there aren't any win totals or such that I've seen up yet. But I did bet Oklahoma to win the national championship at 70-1. Now, I don't necessarily think Oklahoma is going to win the national championship. But at the same time, if they win the Big 12, they're going to be in the playoff. And the Big 12 is the most high variance league where we've seen TCU go 5-7, make the playoff. We've seen Kansas State go from losing record or right around 500 to have a conference title season. We've seen Iowa State go to the conference title game. Like, we've seen a lot of teams in this league who happen to maybe lose a couple of close games here and there. The following year, the trend reverses itself, and they wind up winning those games. If you look at Oklahoma, I mean, you got Dylan Gabriel back. Those young running backs that they like so much played in that bowl game against Florida State last year, and they nearly won that game against a Seminole team that most people think are a top 6, 8, 10 team this year. So that they're all back. Jeff Levy, the offensive coordinator, is back. They did well in the portal. And if you look at the schedule, they don't play Texas Tech and they don't play Kansas State, two teams that have traditionally given Oklahoma trouble. And that's a great thing for the Sooners to miss those two teams. Every game they were in last year with Gabriel at quarterback. Gabriel didn't play against Texas, and then obviously he didn't play the second half against TCU. But all those other games that he was in, they were in all of those games. So you think if maybe you can get a little positive regression in those close calls, maybe Oklahoma finds itself in the Big 12 championship game. If they win, they're going to be in the playoff, and 70-1 is a ticket that you could probably do something with.
Yeah, well, I didn't think of Oklahoma. I did look at Oklahoma and Michigan, knowing that they do bring their quarterbacks back, and I was kind of thinking Michigan is the favorite. But I just with the newer head coach, I just didn't think of it. But 71 is a really nice price for a team that should be winning the Big 12 this year. So I totally get that, and you can hedge that when you make the playoffs, and probably an opportunity to even bet later as lines start coming out here in the summer. that you can just get them to the playoffs too. So love it, Chris. That's a great play. Marco, did you? I know you're knee deep in the NBA and hockey and everything else, baseball. I mean, is it a little early to ask you about college football?
Yeah, a little early on college football. Obviously did follow, the NFL draft and that side of things. And, I got two home teams now. I got to follow my Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, and then the adopted team, the Raiders here. And I just scratch my head with some of the things that the Raiders do and decisions that they're making. But, once we get through, the NBA playoffs dwindled down and the hockey playoffs too. I mean, we're in the middle of, the Golden Knights run, and what a series this is going to be. If last night was any indication with the Knights in Edmonton, it's going to be a fun series to watch. And I can tell you, I will not be betting any unders in that series. that is not one that you're going to see a 2-1. I don't think that you could see a 2-1 game in that one.
All right. Well, mark that down, guys. Well, let's pivot to the NFL a little bit then. Marco, now that the Mitch Trubisky experiment went precisely as we expected last year on this show, I mean, at least Kenny Pickett looks a little bit, possibly like a real NFL quarterback, let's just say. What are your thoughts on the Steelers' chances here in the AFC North, which seems a little bundled up?
It is. Obviously, you got Baltimore, got their house in order with getting Lamar Jackson signed. You've got Cincinnati that we know's got, Joe Burrow, probably the best quarterback, in the division. Cleveland, I'm not going to say anything with Cleveland because, for every year it seems like the last 5 years you hear, this is the year. I'm still waiting for it. It hasn't happened with Cleveland. But as far as my Steelers go, they should be better. What they addressed in the offseason here with some acquisitions is, strengthen up the offensive line a little bit. They're going to make a more concerted effort as far as the running game goes. Najee Harris they're going to ride him, which that's what you want to do when you've got a young quarterback. And the thing about, Kenny Pickett, he's got plenty of detractors. There's no question about that. There's just something about him that you can't describe, that moxie, that if you watch the last 2 games of the season last year with them and the come from behind win against the Raiders, on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception horrible. I mean, it was frigid that night in Pittsburgh, and then do it again the next game, that's gaining confidence of his teammates. And I think that they're ready to take the next step. But the problem is they're still 2 or 3 steps behind Cincinnati and Baltimore at the moment, in my opinion.
Well, what they did right was draft a bunch of Badgers coming into the 2023 season. At least 2 of them were there, Marco. So I like how you guys do concentrate on some of the guys that, might not have a big name coming in, but could definitely make some noise. And the Steelers, man, I'm never going to bet a win total under 8 on the Steelers, just the way that there always seems to be there at number 9. So I love that. And let me give you a quick little wink about the Badgers. If you look at their schedule this year, they avoid Michigan State, they avoid Michigan, they avoid Penn State, and they do get Ohio State at home. So if you think there's any hope for Luke Fickell to do something in his very first year, maybe that win total might come out a little shy. So, just a little food for thought here on putting my Homer hat here on good old Wisconsin. So we're all excited about the Luke Fickell hire. It was tough to see, our old coach go because we thought he was going to be more than an interim. And I'm not talking about Chris, our defensive coordinator that was coaching. I don't know why I just lost his name, but
Jimmy Leonard.
Yeah, yes, Jimmy Leonard, and he played for the Jets, as Chris knows. I'm very excited for Fickell definitely coming in. But I should have asked Chris about Aaron Rodgers and this Jets hype. Actually, man, I totally spaced that one. Chris, I bet you're just jumping through the windows, aren't you?
Well, the Jets clearly needed a quarterback. You could not proceed with the 2023 season with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. It just wasn't going to work. And I think this is a chance now where they can hopefully say, okay, we got Aaron Rodgers here for a couple of years. Maybe Zach Wilson can learn some things, improve in 2 years when Aaron retires or whatever, however many years it's going to be till Aaron retires. Then maybe he's ready to step in and contribute. So, I mean, they needed a quarterback. They went out and made the move. Some people can argue whether it was they gave up too much or not, but they had to do something at the quarterback position, or else there would have been a mutiny in that offensive locker room amongst that receiving core. The problem that I have this year with the Jets is, are they going to get a similar type of defensive performance like they did last year with that unit? I mean, they wasted a really good defense last year, and we'll see if they can perform at that level again. But they've surrounded Aaron Rodgers now with some of the his familiar targets from Green Bay and a couple of offensive linemen. So we'll see. The pieces are in place for them to hopefully make a playoff run this year.
And there's no excuses this year now that you have Rodgers. But here's the thing: I like the Jets and how they stand in this division, just upon the fact that I think Buffalo didn't have a great draft and they lost their best linebacker, and they kind of seem a little bit more vulnerable these days. And Miami, what are you doing? Tua is one hit away from being done in this league, and your backup is Mike White or the dude or the guy from Skylar Thompson from Kansas State. I mean, there is no answer there. So I'll tell you right now, I bet Miami's win total under 9.5, and that was a no-brainer for me. I think that I can just see many ways that one gets home. So there's my little NFL deal for you. Marcos, you have something to say?
Yeah, speaking of getting home, just got watching. If you saw me looking away, my horse was just racing at the Meadows. Just win up in class at 5-1. So I'm stoked right now. Didn't expect her to win today.
Whoa, she won!
Excellent.
Awesome!
Excellent.
Congrats! That's fantastic.
She went first over, and that's not her style. She was 3 deep in the turn. So yeah, it's been a good week for me. I tell you guys.
Wow, she just won recently too.
Yeah, she won.
Sin City
that's
Lori?
why she was. Sin City Lori was yesterday. Today was Southwind Oz.
Oh, okay.
Just win the 9th race at 5-1, and unfortunately, I had a token bet because I always have a token bet on my horses, but I didn't have the big ticket on it because I didn't expect it today. So my trainer's been doing a hell of a job. Kudos to him, and he's a old school guy. He's one of the few trainers that still races on hay and sunshine.
Chris, I didn't get any tips from Marco on this. Did you, by chance?
No, not at all. Some confidence there. Yeah.
Looking at my phone here, I'm not seeing any missed messages or anything. Jeez, Marco, come on.
We all need a little bankroll for the weekend.
Quit leaving us in the cold, man. Jeez. All right. Well, let's get into a little Kentucky Derby, and just maybe I might be watching with Marco because I'm flying up there tomorrow, my friend, and I know you'll be sitting at your usual spot at the South Point, which is a very fun place to check things out. Unfortunately, I'm not in charge here, being that I'm flying with the wife and for a 40th birthday party of some of our friends, but I'm going to see what I can do and try to sell it to them and see if I'm able to join you over there at the South Point, or even I'll be happy to watch it, to be honest with you. But I'm excited for the Derby, and I'll be texting you out there either way. And I'm curious about the weather coming into the Derby. Chris, do you have any? I saw rain in the morning. Is that still kind of the same what we're looking at?
It seems like it's changed 3 times in the last week. It was supposed to be beautiful last week, and then it looked like early in the week it was going to be rain Oaks night and evening and afternoon, and then rain in the morning on Derby Day. And now I see basically this kind of cloudy and a very, very slim chance of any shower. So it looks like we're going to have a fast and firm situation, which is great for all the handicappers and the jockeys and the trainers and the horses themselves. It means we're going to have hopefully a fair track, and everybody will have will not have the excuse of I didn't like the slop. I didn't like the off going. Didn't like the give in the turf. If indeed the forecast doesn't change here in the next 24 hours or so.
No excuses. We don't like that. All right. Well, we're going to have to win then this year, my friends. And Marco, why don't you give us a brief refresher on pari-mutuel betting and how it pertains to this race itself for any new listeners to the Oddsbreakers?
Well, pari-mutuel betting, unlike sports betting, you're not betting against the casino. You're betting pari-mutuel against everybody else in the country that's betting the Kentucky Derby. And obviously, all the money goes into the different pools, win, place, and show, exacta, trifectas, all of those. And what happens is the winning tickets, the number of winning tickets are divided by the total money in the pool. So minus the track getting their cut, you're competing against everybody else. And as Chris said when we started the show, this is the Super Bowl. The Kentucky Derby is an event. People want to bet it. They want to be a part of it, but they don't know jack, you know what about horse racing, but they're going to bet this race because they want to be a part of the party. And that puts dead money into the pool. So, and I tell people all the time, the easiest way to explain this is if you get the two favorites run first and second, maybe on a normal race card, you might be lucky for that exacta to come back $10.80, $12. But that same exacta with those odds in the Kentucky Derby will come back double that because of the dead money in the pool. So that's why we get some of these outlandish prices. And if you do get one of those long shots that run on a ticket, the average bettors generally are not going to have them, and you're going to get balloons as a payoff. A couple years ago, we made the big score, and I didn't even have the winning horse. Wasn't my key. The horse that ran second was my key because I was using a long shot, looking at Lucky, and he, came storming for second at a big number, and he was in all my tickets. So we took out $390 investment that day. We brought back $9,000 with trifectas and exactas. So it was fun for me that way. But this is why smart bettors, advantage players love these big Triple Crown races, because you do get a lot of dead money. And if we get a winner in the Derby and the Preakness, then the Belmont, you get even more value because you have people coming to see a possible Triple Crown winner. You get people want to buy, token tickets on the horse going for the Triple Crown, $2 tickets just to have them as sports memorabilia if the horse does win. So fun times. And I love this time of the year. So unlike Chris, when he opened up and said maybe he's going to pull his, bankroll back in the Derby, I think because this one's wide open, I might have to go to the secondary wallet too. And, we go a little deeper. We got, 2 wallets and a rubber band. So we're going to definitely tap 2 of the 3 money outlets in the pockets.
Yeah. Well, Chris meant he's going from 7 figures to 6. That's all. So I'm sure he'll be fine. No, you are completely right. I mean, pari-mutuel betting, and this is why there's so much opportunity in this race, especially if you feel like you did your homework and, can try to get the most combinations possible without, sacrificing too much, I guess. But you want to put it out there, and so you have those opportunities to win. And that's what you've been so good at, Marco. There'll be times where people say I missed it by 1, but you're not the way you play this. It's really not a missed it by 1 type of situation with you. So that's what's so great about Wager Talk and what you're doing over there, man.
Appreciate it. And like I said, this is the one race that, maybe when you're constructing your ticket that you would have maybe 4 or 5 horses on the bottom spot. This is the time where you go ahead and stretch it to, have 7 or 8 horses on that last line. Put those couple extra horses in that are next in your depth chart at big numbers, because all you need is one of them in there, and it's gonna pay for it. I never go that deep on a normal race day card, but like I said, when the pools are inflated, go ahead and swing for the fences.
Let's swing for the fences. Well, the early lines, Chris, say Tapit Trice at 5-1 here, and if I scroll down to the number 15 horse, drew the 15th pulse in Forte, he is 3-1. Are these 2 horses deserving favorites in this race?
I think they are, based on what we've seen from the past performances in their careers entering this race. However, I want to make a little bit of a bold prediction here. It would not surprise me if Tappet Trice, when they first show those odds, if he's the favorite in the race. I think he is kind of a horse where most people will kind of like, oh, who's the most likely winner? Who are you most confident is going to run their race? I think Tappet Trice is probably the answer that most people would give. I mean, he's a stalker. He's shown he has a little bit of speed. He's battle tested. The bluegrass with verifying showed that he can answer me a challenge. The only concern that I have with Tappet Trice is how often have we seen a Todd Pletcher runner come into the Derby? They get bet, they look great on paper, and then they really don't factor into anything. So that concerns me about Tappet Trice and Forte as well. Again, he's a juvenile champion. He's a deserving favorite. I'm a little worried, though, just because of his bloodlines. Like Violence, his sire, is not a sire known for dropping route runners here. Is it a little concerning that his speed figures have diminished the last couple of races as he's finally reached that 1 1/8 distance? I mean, he was 2-5 in the Florida Derby and was kind of fortunate to win that race. Yeah. Was it the outside post? Was it maybe just a big race, first race off layoff, second race he regressed, and now he's set to run a bigger race? I don't know. On paper, yes, they deserve to be the favorite in the second choice, but I'm inclined to stand against both of them in the win spot.
All right. Well, a little hint on what Chris is leaning towards right now. Marco, are they deserving favorites?
They're deserving favorites for coming in here. Both of them have their question marks of how they can compete. I think Tappet Trice is the most interesting, horse because if you look at him, he's just a physical specimen. The problem with this horse is because he's so big, it takes him a while to get that stride going. He's not one of those horses that have that big move, that wicked brush. He's got to get into gear and he can grind you down. You go back and look at that stretch drive that he had in his last race, him and Verifying. What a stretch duel those two had coming, down the stretch in the bluegrass. And a lot of people do believe the bluegrass was the toughest of the prep races, in the spring. His style in his post position 5 is the only thing that concerns me. This is a horse that if you've watched him race him, and even in his last race, when he drew the rail, they find a way to get this horse to the outside. He doesn't like to be inside of horses. And usually, in a race, you can find your spot. You got plenty of time, get the horse out of tight quarters into where you want him. But the problem is this is a 20-horse field, and we talk about the outside horses all trying to leave the hold position, and for the inside horses, it's almost like a tidal wave at the ocean coming, down to the rail, and he could get locked in, and he could be riding in tight quarters for more of this race than he would like to do before he finds that daylight to get out. So it's going to be interesting what Luis Saez does. Does he try to hustle him out of the gate and hold position, or, just, take back mid-pack and get to the outside into the 2 or 3 path so the horse, can rate and feel comfortable? That's the concern. I think between him and Forte on paper, I like Tappet Trice better, but I think because of the trip concerns, that's my only roadblock.
All right, no, fair enough. And I agree. They should probably be favorites just on what they did in the past. But I also think that they're maybe not much better than a few of these horses in there that have some better prices. And we'll get to that with some of our next questions. For now, I guess the next thing I would like to ask, and I'll ask you first, Marco, is the strength of this card. Where would you rate it compared to other Kentucky Derbies in the past? Like below average, or above average?
I think that going into this year's Kentucky Derby, it's more wide open because we haven't had that established superstar. Granted, Forte is the horse that's caught all of the headlines because whoever's the 2-year-old champion, until you lose the Kentucky Derby, everybody's pointing at you. We also know history-wise, horse that wins the 2-year-old, race, the juvenile, they generally don't come back and win the Derby. They just too much of that 2-year-old campaign taken out of them. But Forte's done what's asked of him. My thing here is because it is such a wide open race. Part of it is, and this would be a good question for Chris, his opinion. I don't know how to group the West Coast horses this year. Every year you know the strengths of the West Coast because we're, I hate to bring them up, but we're minus the Bob Baffert factor. And I think the West Coast horses, there's been no buzz to any of them. So when you're trying to compare races, it's like, was that a good crop out West, or was the West really mediocre this year and is that a subset because we didn't have all cameras following Bob Baffert everywhere? That's my concern on the strength of this race. But we're going to have some horses when we talk about some long shots and stuff that if you like a certain horse, you got to like this other horse too, because of the last race and what they did. I'll go to it right now. If you like Forte, how can you not have Mage on your ticket? Okay. Because he did everything in the Florida Derby, but win. Okay. He made, if one of them, you talk about wicked moves and I say like Tapit Trice doesn't have that power move. You go back and watch the replay and watch the move that Mage made in that race. And this is a lightly raced colt, very inexperienced. He swooped the field 4-5 wide, went into the turn last and come out top of the stretch, chasing down the lead horse, and had a little bit of an extended duel in the stretch with the 9 horse. I forget the name of it right now, but battled that horse, put that horse away. And then it was Forte that picked up the pieces. How many times have you seen 2 horses battle? The one horse finally puts the other one away, and what happens? It's the horse coming off of his back that's has the fresher legs, so to speak, and gets up and beats him. And that's the only thing that got Mage beat. I think his jockey made a premature move. I think he should have waited till he was further out of the turn than going into it to start that move, because he gave up just way too much ground. And a better drive and another race under his belt, Mage could really move up the ladder, but he's going to be subject to the trip. This is another horse that's, going to be coming from behind, and not everybody gets a Rich Strike trip.
That was Cyclone Mischief, I believe,
yes, you are right.
Who actually drew in today with the scratch of practical move. And it's funny, I was writing up my column earlier, and I literally wrote this sentence in, and I'm so happy you and I are thinking alike here. I literally wrote in my write-up for Forte, if Mage nearly beat him in his 3rd lifetime start, wouldn't you prefer Mage in a head-to-head versus Forte moving forward? Like, I think that's a perfectly reasonable and legitimate question, especially given the breeding of both of them. You would think that Mage might like the longer distances more than Forte as well.
You know what I like? I like the 4 times the odds are going to be on Mage than it is on Forte.
Yeah, and getting back to what you were saying about the West Coast horses, I think you have a lot to do. The Baffert thing has a lot to do with it. And you only have 2 West Coast horses in the race now with the scratch of practical move. One is Reincarnate, who I don't think really factors into the race. I think he has to be on the lead, and when he hasn't made the lead, he hasn't shown an ability to pass. I mean, he's been beaten by Angel of Empire at Oaklawn. Confidence game is finish in front of him. I think he's got the look of the throw out. However, the other West Coast horse in here, the number 9 horse Skinner, is someone who I am very interested in. In the Santa Anita Derby, it was his 2nd career start versus winners, and he ran a huge race and nearly got up and beat practical move in that race. It's clear that they thought highly of him early on in the 2nd career race at Del Mar. He ran in the Del Mar Futurity as a maiden. It's clear he's improved dramatically from 2 to 3, and maybe there's more improvement to be had. He's a little bit more of a deep closer, like we were just talking about, and that puts you at the mercy of pace and traffic. But I thought that Santa Anita Derby was really, really good. He's going to be prominent on my tickets, and I think of all the horses in the field, I have the least concern about him being able to get a mile and a quarter. And he's 20-1 in the morning line, and I think he figures big time.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was the reason for the scratch or practical move?
I didn't. I'm sure he either spiked the fever or something in training.
Yeah. Okay. So Cyclone Mischief is taking its place, and I bet you a lot of people, especially a lot of people that don't like Bob Baffert so much, aren't too sad about this scratch right here. And to be honest with you, I put him as a very serious contender, here in this race. And so now we're looking down to Skinner, right? And he's also a Yak Teen horse / Baffert. Now, if the name Baffert was on, or sorry, this is he's Sheriff's, right?
Yeah.
So he's not a Baffert horse, but if the name Baffert wasn't on Practical Move, he would have been maybe 5 or 6 to 1. I thought with Yak Teen's name there, it moves to 10 to 1. Is that fair to say, Marco?
It is, but I actually think that this horse was Yak Team's. I don't think Baffert had this one.
Okay.
The other horse that Yak Team has in here was Baffert's horse at the beginning for sure.
Okay. And so how many more Yak? We have one more from Yak Teen in here. Well, on his name anyway. Which one is that? That's
Reincarnate.
Reincarnate.
7 horse.
Yeah.
Okay, the 7 horse. Okay, and under Reincarnate, I had nothing on him, so that's interesting. Okay, well there you go. That kind of actually fills into my next question too. My thought on the actual strength, I think it's above average, but not top heavy. I think like we were talking before the show started, we can make a case for 8 horses. So you got some above average power, but no California Chromes, no Justifies. Right. Nothing there that, it brings it down to 2 to 1 or something like that on some of these big horses. So I guess that's my opinion. Is that fair to say it's slightly above average, Chris?
The field? Yeah. It's funny. I think it's one of the weaker editions in terms. I mean, maybe it's because of weaker at the top is what we've seen in a long time. But yeah, if you went down the difference between Marco just talked about it too at the Florida Derby. You talk about Forte at 7-2 and Mage at 20 to 1. Like, what's the difference between those two horses? Not much. I think it's kind of like the Big 12. To give you a little football analogy, like there are a bunch of teams that are like 6 through 20, and you can put them in a basket and shake them around, and they're all you could pull a winner out, and you'd say, oh yeah, I believe that. Whereas with some of the other with the SEC, you got the top heavy conferences. But like here, I don't think you have a whole lot of top heavy type horses, even with the favorite Forte and the second choice Tapatrez. I think from a betting standpoint and a balanced field standpoint, in the depth of who can win, it's good. But I don't think we're looking at any potential Triple Crown winner or superstar in this field.
That's a good analogy with the Big 12, and congrats on your TCU to win the Big 12 at like 16 or 20 to 1.
Well, they didn't win the Big 12. They got to the conference title game.
Oh, right. Oh, but you're able to hedge out of it.
Yeah, we were able to. Yeah, the ticket that we had, we were able to do okay.
Why are we always in this position? We're always hedging out of our place.
Yeah, see Buffalo versus Ball State, right?
I don't want to see that. Don't even remind me. Don't remind me of that. Oh, the only 2 guys in the world on Buffalo, except for people that live there. All right, let's move on. So, Marco, looking at this race, what do you think are the horses that are going to lead? Who's going to be the pace setters? Are we going to get suicide fractions in this one again?
I don't think you're going to see suicide fractions, obviously, because of what happened last year. And because one of the horses that I think is going to be on the lead is the Japanese horse. And I know there's 2 Japanese horses in here, but there's only one that I feel has a shot, and that's Derma Sotogake. Yeah. He's 10 to 1 on the morning line. If you go back and watch the UAE Derby, and I know every year people talk, here comes the horse from Japan, same old result, 0 for 18 in the Derby. We all know that stat. But you go back and watch that race, and they put the horse on the lead, which was different than the style they had been racing with him before. This horse just absolutely swelled up on the front end. And when you watch the replay, what I want you to watch is not the horse, but watch the jockey's hands. He never moved his hands until deep stretch. The horse was already drawn off on his own, but he just showed him the whip twice just to get his attention. And the horse accelerated with another gear and opened up another length. If he brings anything like that to the Derby, and we know all of the traveling and how hard it is on these horses, he's going to leave out of post 17. And I can guarantee you, they have shown the jockey on this horse the replay from last year's Kentucky Derby probably 100 times. Don't get in a suicide fractions. Get out there, get your position, and rate the horse. And he was able to rate in the Derby in Dubai. I think he can do that again. And as we see in sports and anything else, there's always an overreaction. And I think some of the other horses are going to overreact to what happened last year and not want to be right at the lead. And he could end up getting away with cheap fractions on the front end. And if they go slow, we've seen what's happened in the Derby, in last few years, Authentic for one of them. You let a horse alone on the lead, they can end up winning this Derby because they put up too much ground between them and those stalkers and late closers and have something left in the tank. So for the first time, I really do think a Japanese horse has a strong possibility of making noise in this. And by making noise, not setting suicide fractions, still being there at the top of the stretch.
Interesting. And of course, you look at the time, 155.4 on the UAE Derby, which is the only other race besides Louisiana Derby that has a mile and 3/16, right? It has the full length of the Kentucky Derby. That number always needs to be adjusted. And I think it's because of the elevation or the air or maybe the track at the UAE.
You ask three different people, they're going to give you three different ways that they look at the speed rating. And that's been the problem. You're trying to compare apples to apples, but it's not. It's apples to oranges. And you just can't put a 100% speed figure on what that race was over there, bringing it here.
Oh, that makes total sense. And Chris, do you agree that he takes the lead, or do you have anyone else in mind?
I'm curious. I certainly think from the inside, Verifying is going to go to the front.
I do too.
I think he's going to go to the front. And again, this could be just maybe wishful thinking on my part, and that I want to see a stalker closer. That's who I like in the race. I think Kings Barnes is going to maybe on the front. I mean, that Louisiana Derby race, he crawled up front. So how fast is he really? I think Reincarnate, the only way he has a chance is to put him into the race early. I think the horse that drew in, Cyclone Mischief, the only way he knows is to go fast up front. And Rocket Can adds blinkers, and who knows if that's going to quicken him up as well. So I certainly understand and respect what Marco's saying, but I think there might be I don't think they're going to let Dervis Sotogake get away with an easy lead. At least I would hope the jockeys are smart enough not to, because as Marco alluded to, we've seen it before. A horse like Authentic or Medina Spirit, you let them get away, and it's hard for them to come back. So I would anticipate there being not a suicidal pace, but I think there'll be company and a contested lead.
All right. Well, let me put my conspiracy hat on, which my wife tells me I wear every day. I think that Verifying is going to want to take the lead for a couple reasons. Number one, he's close to the rail, right? So he wants to get the heck out of there, or at least get up front, much better than going in the back. And I think maybe Brad Cox with him sets up the number 14 horse, Angel of Empire, right? Kind of coming up to make that close here at the end. Now, I don't know if the fraction is going to be that out of whack, and it's a great question. It's $1 million question. But I don't know, Marco. It just feels like he's got two horses here. He can set up his number 14 one that really looked good in the Arkansas Derby. Now, he didn't get the good buyers. He got 94 for that. Rather, some of these horses are at 100, 101. But I guess that's my conspiracy theory, Marco.
There's no question that Verifying has to leave from post 2. I had Verifying high on my list prior to the post draw. I don't like the post draw of 2 at all with this horse. We all know how bad it is to draw the 1 hole. This is a horse that's going to need to be near the front. That's what he likes to do. Yeah, you could say he's going to break out of the gate and go there, but how much is he going to have to use to go there and get there? Because there's so much speed from the outside that he's going to have to contend with. In the horse, if you want to do conspiracy theory, the 12 horse is the horse that will be used by the Brad Cox barn if they're going to use a rabbit. They'll send that horse, who I think has 0 chance of winning this race, but he can set up Angel of Empire, with the fast fractions. That's the one I would put the conspiracy theory on. I actually like verifying, but when my takeaway when the post positions came out, if there was one horse other than the post position 1 that got hurt the most for their racing style, it was verifying, because I'm concerned he's going to get pinned at the rail, or he's going to use too much to get in that top 3 spots going into that first turn.
Yeah, Jason's Road is a total vanity entry. I mean, and it was what I can see that being the ownership group can be like, hey, we had the lead in the Derby at one point, and they can be happy. But I want to throw a little conspiracy back at you. I think the horse that could benefit from verifying being in the 2 hole is Hit Show on the rail. Now, as we know all the numbers about the rail and horses who had been bet from the rail before, and the last one to win and the last one to finish in the money and really run a good race. Like, if this horse wouldn't have drawn the rail, like, I would have think Hit Show had a big shot in this race. His numbers are improving. He was probably the best in the wood when he got beat by Lord Miles. He's been favored in every race in his career. Like, I guess the battle that you need to have internally with yourself is 30-1 worth the risk of the rail, knowing that maybe the rail with the new starting gate isn't as bad as it was with the 16 horse gate and then the auxiliary gate where the angles were different. Like, you've got a horse again who with these bloodlines should get the distance. Maybe verifying breaks, and it allows Hit Show a little bit of room to maneuver off the rail. That way he's not completely slammed into it at the start. I don't know. I'm just trying to spitball some thoughts and ideas out there for long shot prices that maybe ultimately have a chance.
No, that's exactly what I want to hear, because I mean, the worst thing you can do is, have a bunch of bets and all of a sudden it comes Forte, number 1, maybe Angel of Empire, which I think is going to get bet up. I don't think he closes 8-1. I think he's going to close more like maybe 5 or 6-1, most likely.
Oh yeah, he's going to get bet for sure.
Yeah. I mean, just all the shows I'm listening to. It sucks because I landed on him too. But it's just going to make it so that ticket's not going to pay nearly as much as one of these big hogs here. So that's what I'm looking at too. So I'm glad that you're bringing all this stuff up. And I guess that leads me into the next question. Who would your sleepers be, Chris? And then we'll move to Marco.
I mentioned Hit Show. He certainly would be one. Skinner would be another one who I mentioned as well. And then 2 other ones who I have some interest in are Confidence Game, who's got 2 wins over the Churchill surface, which is a very important factor for me come Derby. To horses that have a good race over Churchill, I like to move them up a bit to show that they can handle that surface. Confidence Game was 19-1 in the Rebel on a wet track. He ran huge. If there is some rain, maybe you move him up a little bit. He's also shown that he can be comfortable from off the pace. So if he gets the distance, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be good enough, but at 20-1 or better, I'm certainly going to use him. And then the other horse I'm going to look at is Rocket Can. He's someone who reminds me a little bit of Country House a couple of years ago. But Bill Mott, the trainer, we know that Mott has won a Triple Crown race. Drosselmeyer was a big long shot when he won. He's certainly going to be a long shot in this race. 30-1 in the morning line. The 2 sprint races, the 2-year-old in Saratoga didn't really treat him well. But if you look at his route races have been good. He won the Holy Bull. He was second to Forte in the Fountain of Youth. He was favored in the Arkansas Derby, where he had a wide trip and was basically 3 across the track behind Angel of Empire, who won the race going away. I mentioned before he adds blinkers, so maybe he's in the race a little bit earlier from that outside post, and that way he doesn't get wide all the way around. Like I said, Country House was kind of the same way. He had a bunch of solid races as a 3-year-old and was always bet, and then put his best race forward for Saturday in May. So again, can Rocket Can win? I think he can. I think there's a chance, and there's a scenario at 30-1. I'm willing to take a chance. So those are the 4 price horses I am interested in.
Oh, nice, Marco. Who are your and when I say sleeper, anybody I guess you can say, but the 2 favorites.
Yeah, well, I already talked about one of them. I think Mage has the license to make another big step forward. And like I said, if you go back and watch the Florida Derby, did everything but win that race. And you got to think that with another race under his belt, the experience factor, and that was another thing too that's happened sometimes with green horses. And when we use that term, that's the immature, a horse that doesn't have a lot of experience. When he put the 9 away in that Florida Derby, the horse might have, for him, there was nobody in front of him. He thought the race was over. And sometimes a horse that's young and gets the lead in deep stretch eases up a little bit, he relaxes and lets that other horse catch him. And that was Forte that caught him. Skinner is a horse that's interesting, that has potential here. The 4 horse that you did mention, this is a horse I have the biggest problem with. On paper, I want to use him so bad. And if it does come up wet, I want to use him even more. I just can't get past his last race was February. That's not a pattern that wins going into the Derby. You need one more prep race in there. They thought about briefly putting him in the Lexington to get him a race, but that would have been too close to the Derby. I'm not a fan of racing in the Lexington and then coming back in the Derby 3 weeks later. If this horse is, got enough miles under him and it's tight enough, and you can train all you want in the morning, but I can tell you from personal experience, it is not the same what you get in the morning as to what you get out of an actual race. So that's the only knock on the 4 confidence game, but they got the confidence to put him in here. Excuse the pun. Not racing, since February. I got to give him a look. Let's put it this way. Chris, he's not going to beat me on my ticket. There's going to be some tickets that have number 4 on it, because I don't want to say, I missed the Derby because I was too stubborn or pig-headed with the 2-month layoff, because it's just something as a horseman I know is tough to overcome.
Oh, there you go. Don't let him beat you. Then you feel much better about yourself there. Well, when I texted Chris, I think yesterday or the day before, I asked him who would be the public horses. And I kind of thought 2 Phils, just from me listening around to shows and stuff like that. And there's something that, everyone's talking about. He had the highest buyer speed out of all these horses and tied with some others, if you want to look at some of the time form and some of the other, measurements here. But my problem with 2 Phils is that he didn't race against any competition, really, I thought, at the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I personally did not see anybody that was a contender. And everything was just so great for him. The trip, wide open at the end. And then if you look down, he was an 86 buyers in was it the Risen? I just think it was just a massive step up in competition. So I just feel like everybody's going to be using 2 Phils. I think it'd be beneficial for me to not use him, especially if he's going to drop down to 8-1 or something, Marco.
Yeah. 2 Phils is an interesting horse. My concern is I don't like him to win, but I do think he has a legit shot of running on the ticket. And it's mainly, I don't want to knock the trainer and jockey, but when you're new to the Derby, okay, it is just tough. In the Derby, you've got to make so many decisions jockey wise, split second decisions. And I just don't know if this is too big of a stage for these connections this first time. That's my concern there. Now I know, and I'm curious to see what Chris says. I'm hearing a lot of buzz from people in, Louisville, and watching Two Phils in the morning, and he's looked incredible on the track and all of that. What are you hearing being down there?
Oh, same thing. I mean, he's someone who is garnering a lot of attention. I'm just concerned just about what you were talking about. Now we can say the same thing last year with those connections winning the Derby, like are Larry Ravelli and Jareth Ludbury going to team up and win the Derby? I think a little bit too much is being made of that Buyer speed figure coming off the synthetic at Turfway and a bad stakes race, a bad prep. Like if you look at the races at Fairgrounds, he was beaten pretty handily by Angel of Empire and Sun Thunder, who, by the way, who was like 50-1 in this race. I don't see it. Where you're just talking about if confidence game isn't going to beat you. Two Phils is someone who, if he wins, I'm willing to accept losing to this horse because you can't bet them all. You've got to take a stand against a couple of horses, and the beauty of parimutuel wagering is you can react and look other directions as to from some of these horses that are getting played. But I think if you look at who the bet down horses are going to be, Two Phils is going to be one, Angel of Empire is going to be one, and I think Dermot Sotogake is going to be one as well. Because I think there are a lot of people that have a similar opinion, Marco, that this horse has the best chance of all those previous UAE Derby runners to come over here and really make a good effort.
All right. Well, there you go. I asked you guys the sleepers. Now I just kind of want to ask who you guys are going to have kind of as your favorites to win this thing. You can name 2 or 3 without giving up too much information, of course, Marco. Who do you think is going to win this race? Who's some of the main horses you're going to use, and how are you going to play this Derby?
Well, when I construct my trifecta tickets, I do construct a deeper ticket. I'll start off with 3 or 4 key horses on that first line, and then drop them down to the second line as well, and then add a horse, and then I'll go pretty deep on the third line. And like I said, you can afford to do that in the Derby because of the potential payouts if you get one of those longer shots anywhere on the ticket. But the 4 horses that I think have the best chance of winning this race, and those will be the horses that I'll be keying in exactas and tries. Angel of Empire is the horse that I like. I think this horse is peaking at the right time. You'll love the connections. How can you not? They're winning every big race there is. And you look at his last race, and this is another one of those horses where I talk about you want to see one of those moves where you just sit back and go, whoa, what did I just see? And Angel of Empire has that. Forte, you got to put him on your ticket. You can't leave him off. If there's going to be a horse that's going to be overbet, I think Forte won't get overbet in this race because I think there's a lot of opinions here. But if he wins the Derby, he's going to be the overwhelming favorite in the Preakness. There'll be no value, and he'll probably get the Preakness because the pattern we've seen the last few years is the horse that wins the Derby, everybody's, the contenders skip the Preakness looking to ambush people in the Belmont. And that's why I think we're getting so many opportunities for Triple Crown horses, because we get the repeat on the Preakness because the Preakness field has not been as strong. So Forte on a ticket, Tapit Trice, we talked about it. I think physical, specimen of a horse. I think he's the most intriguing horse from a method of just looking at him and what he does on the track. And my long shot, as I said, he's 15-1, but I don't think he's going to go off 15-1. I think a lot of people are going to subscribe to the theory that I do. If you like Forte, how in the hell do you not like Mage at 15-1? Okay, you're getting 5x the odds on the morning line that these 2 horses were separated by a head. come on. It's plus EV. It's one of those ones where, it's like it's 1 a.m. and I'm walking out of the South Point and they got $6.99 steak and eggs. I'm really not that hungry, but it's $6.99. I got to have steak and eggs.
Yeah, it's almost like you're committed at that point. It's like, price too good. Well, Chris, you named 3 of the favorites, and I'll give you I'm glad that you went to Mage here. So they're deserving favorites according to Marco here. So I don't disagree. Those are definitely going to be some heavily bet horses, but I think some of the love spread around to some of these other horses will, keep Forte's price up a little bit for us. Chris, who are yours?
I said, obviously, coming in, how we talked about how there really isn't a big difference between the horse who would be the favorite on the morning line and some of these horses that are 20-1, and that's how I'm going to stick to betting the race. I think my 2 key horses in the race are going to be the number 9 horse Skinner and the number 18 horse Rocket Ken. They will. I'm going to key them with a bunch of other horses in exactas and trifectas and hope for the right outcome. It would not surprise me to see one of those 2 horses win. And the horse, as I go back through the PPs, as I'm skimming up and down here as we talk about and bring certain things up, boy, does Verifying look good on paper. He ran too good to lose in the Bluegrass. He looked like a winner, and then Tapatrice ultimately just got by him. But if that pace scenario doesn't evolve, I mean, Marco was talking about it early as well. Like if the suicidal fractions and someone does get away, and we know Verifying has to send from down, like, boy, at 15-1, that's someone I'd want on my ticket. But the 2 horses I am certainly going to use as my prominent horses are Skinner and Rocket Ken.
All right, no, fair enough. And, I wrote Verifying hates the mud just because the Rebel. So I don't know if he really does. I'm thinking we're going to get a dry track anyway, but I guess we'll see it. You're right.
He was favored in that race. Oaklawn's a weird surface. Like there are a lot of horses that go to Oaklawn and don't necessarily like it, and to be stuck down on the inside and kind of not really get a chance to. I would throw that. That's the thing. I would throw that race. I would throw that race out, and I would throw the. I'm thinking about someone. I'm sorry. Someone else. Someone sent me a text right now. Breaking news. As we're doing this, that Safi Joseph runner is out of the race now as well.
Which one?
Lord Miles, number 19, and the other Japanese horse, Mandarin Hero, is just drawn in. So. Readjust your handicapping as is. And Mandarin Hero, he is another Japanese horse that ran lights out at Santa Anita and nearly got to practical move in the Santa Anita Derby when he and Skinner were charging late. So he's another horse now that will be a little bit more of a stalker, and you move Cyclone Mischief in. All those horses on the outside now that move one more place in him. Yeah, I wonder if Lord Miles, if something happened to Lord Miles, if that is just a Safi Joseph with the unfortunate instances that the incident rather. I can't talk right now. That he had this week with a couple of the horses breaking down. If that's related or not. Hopefully nothing serious is wrong with the horse, but Lord Miles, who won the Wood at 50-something-1, will not be running.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was crossing him off anyway. He was a scratch horse, Lord Miles, for me. I don't know if he was for you, but I'm just going to. He was a pitch, yeah. So here's some of my pitches. I had Continue R. I had Lord Miles. I had Rocket Can, but Chris has kind of talked me off that a little bit. Sun Thunder, Jace's Road, Disarm. I'm just not sure of. I kind of put him. Maybe he'll end up on the end of a trifecta or something.
Another one he ran in the Lexington that Marco was talking about a couple weeks ago, and it's a weird path. I mean, this horse really hasn't done much to really deserve a spot here.
Okay, good. So then, and Reincarnate was a scratch, and that's really it. I kind of had Hit Show just for drawing the rail, but you guys made a decent case for him. So
can I give another update, by the way?
Yes, please.
My buddy Kev, we were pondering about hopefully nothing was seriously wrong with the horse. I've been told that the racing commission has said that all of Safi Joseph's horses have to be scratched.
Whoa.
So that's interesting.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. Jeez.
Oh, they did it to they did it to Bob Baffert. I guess they can do it to Safi Joseph, right?
Yeah.
Going to be waiting to see what horse tested positive.
Lord Miles.
Safi Joseph, this is, I hate to say it, but, we talked about obviously what happened with Bob Baffert, but if you've watched Safi Joseph over the years, just a tip for your listeners, dominates Gulfstream Park. Okay. Doesn't seem to have the same winning percentage when he's at any other track other than Gulfstream.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a little bit of home cooking down there or a little home looking the other way down there, but the way Baffert dominated California, that's the way Safi Joseph dominated Gulfstream.
Would you look at that? Well, Lord Miles, we're not worried about him, but I found that interesting. So I do have to assume it might have been him, in that race. It's just, this is the time that they would do it. Like they test them all, right? Or do they test them right before? How does that work, Margot?
I'm guessing that this is going to be something from another horse.
Okay.
They're going on because if they did give the horse something, you wouldn't be giving the horse something it would be something done closer to the race and they would be looking for it. And again, you got to know what you're looking for. That's the biggest misconception about these guys when they finally do get, tested positive. They might have been using that same substance for months. And, the racing commission, when you draw blood or, you catch the urine sample after the race, they send it to the lab. The lab can only find what they're looking for. If you don't know what foreign substance they're using until, they finally catch somebody with the goods, you don't know how to test for it. And that's unfortunately what happens. But I'm thinking we're going to have more to this story is going to come out in the next 24 hours, and it's not going to be good for Safi Joseph.
Yeah, and my guess is probably related to the breakdowns that he had earlier in this week and doing a little investment. That will be my guess.
All right. Well, I'll just give you one horse that I was going to possibly use, and that's King's Barnes. And this is usually a traditional throwaway horse that, he won the Louisiana Derby, but one thing I do like is how he's moving up in his buyers. He only has those three main races here, looking at, and I'll share my screen. But, what I do like about him, first of all, he's a Pletcher horse. He's at a halfway decent price. And I just think that if this keeps improving, maybe he's the one that benefits here, being in a pretty decent post position. So I was thinking about using him, and unless you guys are against it, I like the fact that he did run the 1.25 miles.
I think the horse, obviously, is, he's 3 for 3, lightly raced. He's racing against history. Only 2 horses have won the Derby that didn't race as a 2-year-old. All of that said, he is absolutely bred for this race. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got a horse that, Uncle Mo for the sire, and it's a Tappet mare. That is one hell of a bred horse, breeding wise.
Yeah.
The thing that I don't like, and I forgot to mention it when we talked about Angel of Empire, and I think that this is one of the reasons why Angel of Empire, the odds are going to be smaller than the morning line. I was shocked to see 8-1, but this is a handicapping angle, guys. The jockeys make their money by percentage of what the horse earns in the race. So a jockey's going to pick the horse that he thinks has the best chance. Flavian Pratt rode King's Barn in his last start and was that easy win, and he's undefeated. He's not riding King's Barn in this race. He's on Angel of Empire, okay? So you can't get information from the horse's mouth, but you can get information from the jockey. And when a jockey has 2 horses available and he picks one over the other, trust me, he definitely believes Angel of Empire gives him the better chance of winning the Kentucky Derby. And as somebody that's been on the other side of, having a jockey named on your horse and on 2 other horses in the race, and he picks the other horse, you get, oh, shit, we don't have a chance today, but that's a handicapping angle you got to look at. And that's the only thing that keeps me off of Kingsbarn. Won't keep me off. He's going to be one you put on your ticket, but why I went the other direction for the win.
How often does it happen where the jockey picks the other horse and the other horse wins anyway? I could have sworn I've seen that before.
Oh, it happens, and it happened to me with one of my horses 2 weeks ago. I won the race, and obviously I'm ecstatic. But the part of the race that was the best is the horse that we went by right at the wire. The odds-on favorite was the jockey that was supposed to drive my horse. So, hey, how you doing?
See ya, buddy.
You effed up, buddy.
Eat my dust. That is hilarious. No, that is awesome. Yeah, I just looked at the pedigree and everything, and Ortiz is not exactly anybody new here to the Derby, so I figure he should be able to be a pretty good jockey for this horse. So it's just like Chris said in the beginning, like you guys, like both of you said, this is a race where you can make a lot of cases, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for breaking everything down here. And Marco, where could our listeners and viewers get your great information and how you're going to build your card for this weekend?
Yeah, guys, we've been on a run with sports. It's been an incredible 2023 for us. So what I've done, if you head over to Wager Talk, you can look at Saturday. I've got my Kentucky Derby plus all sports access package. You'll get all of the plays in the hockey playoffs, NBA playoffs, in Major League Baseball. I'll put all my plays in there and my Kentucky Derby, exactly how I'm playing the race. So all you got to do is, take your phone to the window and, copy off right there. You've seen it, Kiev. I've sent you the over the years, what I tell the clients to do. It's you can't screw it up, and you'll be playing the race exactly like me. So head over to Wager Talk to check that out, and hopefully we can do what we did a couple of years ago with bring back an $8,000 try and a $300 and some exactas. Those are fun days.
Yes, they are.
Those are certainly fun days. And Chris, over at Fox Sports, is that where we can find your column this weekend on the Derby?
Yeah, we'll have a Derby picks column up there at some point tomorrow, early, maybe even later tonight. We'll see. We'll also have some USFL picks up there. We've been picking the USFL games for Fox and done pretty well so far. Hopefully that streak will continue. But yeah, there'll be Derby picks, Derby column, and all that stuff will be up there on Fox Sports, and we'll see if I can tweet out maybe some thoughts as well throughout tomorrow or throughout Friday and Saturday. Some of the undercard races. I really haven't had an opportunity to look at the undercard races yet, but I'm thinking that there will be a potential to build some pick fours and pick fives throughout the day as well.
All right. Well, we're stoked for it. Make sure you guys check out Marco at Wager Talk, Chris over at Fox Sports. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll be texting.
My pleasure. Take care, guys.
Take care.